When Johnny Depp and Alice Cooper step on a stage together, you expect chaos, guitars, and maybe a little madness. But on this night, their tribute to Ozzy Osbourne turned into something no one was prepared for. A performance so raw, so explosive, that even Ozzy himself couldn't believe what he was seeing. This wasn't just paranoid. This was rebellion, reborn, and the moment the music hit, everything changed. Welcome back to Luminoir Family tonight. We break down the performance the world still can't stop talking about. Picture this: a darkened stage, 3 legends who've lived 1,000 lifetimes between them, and one song that changed rock and roll forever. When Johnny Depp and Alice Cooper joined forces to pay tribute to Ozzy Osbourne with their blistering version of Black Sabbath's iconic track, something magical happened. This wasn't just another cover. This was rock royalty bowing to the godfather of heavy metal. And the world watched in absolute awe. But here's what makes this story so incredible. These aren't just random musicians jamming together. This is a brotherhood forged in chaos, built on mutual respect, and cemented by decades of defying expectations. Let's rewind. Johnny Depp, you know him as Captain Jack Sparrow, as Edward Scissorhands, as the man who brought Tim Burton's wildest dreams to life on screen. But what most people forget is that before Hollywood ever knew his name, Depp was a musician, not a dabbler. A serious, dedicated guitarist who moved to Los Angeles with his band, The Kids. Dreaming of making it big in rock and roll, music wasn't a hobby for Johnny. It was his first love, his escape, his identity. Even as his acting career skyrocketed through the 80s and 90s, Depp never stopped playing. He'd show up at clubs unannounced, jam with whoever would let him. Because for him, the guitar was home. It was the one place where he could be himself without the cameras, without the scripts, without the pressure of being a movie star. And then there's Alice Cooper, the shock rock pioneer who literally invented the theatrical horror show that rock concerts would become. With his guillotines and fake blood and boa constrictors, Cooper turned music into visceral theater. He pushed boundaries. He made parents nervous. He made teenagers feel dangerous. But beneath the makeup and the madness was a man who genuinely loved the craft. A songwriter. A performer who understood that rock and roll was about more than just noise. It was about connection. About making people feel something raw and real. Cooper had battled his own demons. Alcoholism nearly destroyed him in the 70s. But he clawed his way back, got sober, stayed sober, and became an elder statesman of rock. Someone younger musicians looked up to not just for his legendary status, but for his survival. Now here's where it gets interesting. In 2015, something unexpected happened. Johnny Depp and Alice Cooper, along with Aerosmith's Joe Perry, formed a supergroup called Hollywood Vampires. The name itself was a tribute to the infamous drinking club that Cooper belonged to in the 70s. Alongside John Lennon, Keith Moon, and other rock legends who'd party until dawn at the Rainbow Bar and Grill on Sunset Strip. But this new Hollywood Vampires had a different mission. They wanted to honor the friends they'd lost. The musicians who burned too bright and flamed out too fast. Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin. All the beautiful, tortured souls who gave everything to their art. And who better to honor than Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness himself, the man who bit the head off a bat and somehow became a beloved cultural icon, the frontman of Black Sabbath, the band that essentially invented heavy metal. Ozzy's influence on rock music can't be overstated. Black Sabbath didn't just play loud. They played dark. They explored themes of doom, paranoia, war, and inner demons at a time when most rock bands sang about teenage romance. They created something entirely new, something that spoke to the alienated, the outsiders. the kids who felt like they didn't belong. The song that Depp and Cooper chose for their tribute. Black Sabbath's second-ever single from 1970, a track about mental anguish and the fear of losing your mind. A song that became an anthem for anyone who ever felt trapped inside their own head. When Hollywood vampires performed this tribute, it wasn't polished or overproduced. It was raw, gritty, real. Johnny Depp's guitar work cut through like a blade. Alice Cooper's vocals carried decades of lived experience. Every note felt earned. You could see it in Depp's face as he played. This wasn't acting. This was a man doing what he was born to do. His fingers moved across the fretboard with the kind of confidence that only comes from thousands of hours of practice. From late nights in dingy clubs. From a lifetime of devotion to the craft and Cooper. He commanded that stage like he'd done 10,000 times before, because he had. His voice still carried that menacing edge, that theatrical danger. But now it was tempered with wisdom, with survival, with gratitude for still being here to tell the tale. The performance was electric. The crowd lost their minds, because they were witnessing something rare. 3 generations of rock and roll connected through one song, through mutual respect, through shared understanding of what it means to pour your soul into your art. But here's what makes this tribute even more powerful. Both Depp and Cooper had walked through their own personal hells by this point. Jonny was navigating one of the most publicized and painful divorces in Hollywood history. His reputation was being torn apart in tabloids. His personal life became a circus. Yet here he was, on stage, finding refuge in the one thing that had always saved him: music. Alice Cooper, meanwhile, had long since proven that you could survive the rock and roll lifestyle without letting it destroy you. He was the living proof that you could be wild on stage and stable in life, that you could honor your past without being consumed by it. And Ozzy, well, Ozzy had survived everything the universe could throw at him. Decades of substance abuse, a plane crash that killed his guitarist, health problems, family drama broadcast to millions on reality TV. Yet somehow, impossibly, he was still standing, still performing, still being Ozzy. That's what made this tribute so meaningful. It wasn't just about covering a great song. It was about acknowledging the survival, the endurance, the refusal to let the darkness win. When you watch footage of this performance, pay attention to the details. The way Depp's expression changes when he hits certain notes. The knowing glances between the musicians. The energy that flows between them. This is what chemistry looks like. What brotherhood looks like. This is what happens when artists who've lived through the fire come together to celebrate the ones who lit the match. The legacy of this tribute extends beyond just one performance. Hollywood vampires went on to tour the world, bringing this energy to stages everywhere. They proved that rock and roll wasn't dead, that the spirit of rebellion and authenticity could still thrive in an age of manufactured pop stars and algorithmic playlists. They reminded us that music, real music, is about connection, about shared experience, about looking at someone else and saying, "I see you. I've been there. We're in this together." And isn't that what the greatest tribute to Ozzy Osbourne could be? Not just covering his songs, but embodying his spirit. The spirit that says you can be weird. You can be dark, you can struggle, you can fall down, and you can still get back up and create something beautiful. Johnny Depp and Alice Cooper didn't just perform a song. They channeled decades of rock and roll history. They honored the fallen and celebrated the survivors. They reminded everyone watching why this music matters. Because in the end, rock and roll has always been about the outcasts, the misfits, the ones who felt things too deeply and refused to pretend otherwise. And when 3 of the biggest outcasts to ever grace a stage come together to celebrate the ultimate outcast, something transcendent happens. That's the power of this tribute. That's why it matters. That's why it'll be remembered. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and join the Luminoir family. We dive deep into the untold stories behind your favorite legends. Because every icon has a human story worth telling.